To all who come to this happy place, welcome.
What is it about Disney that makes us happy? Is it the magical whistle as your ticket is scanned at the main gate? Is it the seafaring smell of pirate water? Or is it charting a course to a land where you may never grow up? Whether it's singing a familiar song, watching a movie, or riding your favorite attraction for the 100th time, Disney undeniably has a way to warm our hearts, believe in magic, and bring joy into our lives. This is Main Gate Magic, a podcast where we break down and discuss the infectious happiness, delight, and thrill of all things Disney. Well, hello there, everybody. Today is Tuesday, March 11th, and welcome back to another fun-filled, exciting, and wondrous episode of Main Gate Magic. I am Jason Braden, your host as usual, and my co-hosts with me today are Miss Leia and Thomas. How you guys doing today?
Fantastic.
Doing
Good
great.
to see you both here. Appreciate you being here. And as our special guest today, we have Mr. Bill Morrison. Bill, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jason.
Round of applause, everybody. Round of applause.
Thank you, Thomas.
Bill,
Happy
you
New
and
Year.
thank you. You and I met, I think it was last year at a Stockton Con in Stockton,
Yes.
California, where you were doing your art, and I saw like all the amazing stuff you do and all the things you've done for Disney and The Simpsons alike, and of course all the other talents that you've done in your career. And I said I had to have you on my show, and you so willingly obliged. So thank you for taking your time to be with us today. It is a great honor to have you, sir.
Well, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And for those who missed last week's episode, we had Mr. Joe Achman on the show. He is the current voice for this little character right here, Mr. Jiminy Cricket himself.
Aw.
Joe was a lot of fun, and he had a lot of great stories, and he said he would love to come back, and we would love to have him too. And
I'd love to have him too. We missed
yeah.
him. Oh, I was so
And-
sad.
Bill, just like any other of our guests, you know, you're always welcome to come back on if you have a good time. So
Thank you.
yeah, absolutely. So for those that are in the chat room right now and haven't said a hello yet, the room is open, and I will show your appreciation as you ask questions. If you guys have one for Bill, please shout it out. In the audience, we have Patricia, our usual #1 fan. Hey, everyone, she says. Hi, Patricia.
Hi, Patricia.
We have Brandon, who says, hey, Bill.
Hey, Brandon. I see
And
you there. Hey,
we
Andrew.
we were talking about Mr. C. Andrew Nelson earlier, and he
Hey,
says,
Andrew.
greetings from the dark side. Yes.
Greetings
And
from the
oh my
lights.
gosh, hey, Kevin Richardson from Where in the Park is watching today. Oh my gosh, and Mr. Jerry
Kevin,
Cornell.
hi,
We were
Jerry.
talking about him too.
Hey.
This is amazing. I love all these people today. Thanks for joining, guys. Pleasure to all have you here. So, hey, Bill, let's get into some questions here, shall we? So
Hey.
why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and let's start like with how did you get into, let's get into art. Because you've done all sorts of different types of media, but just art in general.
Well, my older sister, Sue, is the one that got me drawing. And I don't actually remember it, but she said I was 3 years old. And she sat me down at the kitchen table with paper and crayons, probably. And she drew a little stick man. and she said, Billy, I want you to imitate what I just did.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to go do something and come back in a few minutes. But when I come back, I want to see how you did. And I said, okay, apparently. And
As a 3-year-old does.
yes. And
Yes, of course.
I said, oh, yes, that will be fine. You take your time and come back whenever you feel like it. Yeah, I have no idea what I said, but I did it. I looked at her drawing, and but I realized that people didn't look that way because she drew like a very basic stick figure, is what she told me. And when she came back, what I had done was like a full-bodied person. So
Whoa.
I'd given a width to the body. I had arms. Apparently, I had the arms. I didn't understand shoulders. So I had the arms kind of coming out from the side, from the midsection. And but I put on clothing, details, like hair and facial details that she didn't have in her drawing.
My
And
goodness.
she kind of flipped out. She's 11 years older than me, so she would have been about 14.
Oh, wow.
And she started yelling, "You're going to be an artist. Oh my God, you're going to be an artist." And she was my big sister, so I believed her. And I, as we grew up, she was always, whatever I was into, whether it was Snoopy and, Charlie Brown, or Batman or monsters, she would take notice, and she'd, take me aside, get out drawing supplies, and she would say, "Okay, I'm going to show you how to draw the Wolfman." And she would draw the Wolfman on a big piece of paper, and I would imitate it. And that's how I learned to draw.
That's phenomenal. I
What
have
a
to
good
ask,
sister.
do you have the original drawing still? Did she save it, or did you save it?
No.
Oh.
I was
I-
hoping the same.
Yeah, I wish. I really wish I had that.
Could you recreate it?
I probably could. I the earliest drawing I have was a drawing I had. I think I did it in kindergarten, and I had to draw my family apparently. So it's kind of like a lineup.
Yeah.
So it's my dad, my mom, my older sister Sue, and then Janice. Don. We're a big family. So 6 kids and the parents and the dog. And there's 2 funny things about it. I apparently drew myself too tall, because I realized, like, I started at the head, and when I got down to the feet, I realized, well, this is about how tall I am, but now I'm above the ground where everybody else is.
Yeah.
And I figured if I made my legs go all the way to the ground, I would look too tall.
Mm-hmm.
So I
So
drew
that's
a
when you
little.
put him in the foreground then.
Well, no, I drew a little hill.
Oh, there you go.
Oh,
So I'm standing on a little hill.
Very
And
creative.
And my mom, everybody's like looking really happy, and my mom is at the sink doing dishes with a frown on her face.
oh no.
But you can see where I had erased a smile. Like she originally was smiling, and I don't know if that was like self-editing. Like I realized, oh no, it's funnier if she's frowning.
Okay, you were making like a comic strip or something?
Maybe my sister said, oh, she wouldn't be smiling if she's doing the dishes. You should make her frowning. So
I was just going to say,
art direction.
Who smiles when they do dishes anyway? I mean, come on.
Snow White. Snow White.
Oh,
True.
I guess so. I mean, let's all live in a fairy tale, and I'd be happy to do dishes all the time, right?
Yeah. Bill, I have a question. So all through elementary school, were you the best artist in your class each grade?
Pretty much, yes.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, I mean, there were always a few people who could draw, and we would sort of gravitate towards each other and hang out.
Yeah.
I had a friend named Matt Mahoney who was a good artist,
Mm-hmm.
and the 2 of us were really into peanuts. So,
Oh,
and we
I
would
like
get
pistachios myself.
Neither of us were allergic, so uh, we would always get tagged to do the bulletin boards, like whenever it was like a holiday coming up, Valentine's Day or
Oh,
Christmas or
fun.
whatever. We would do like themed bulletin boards
Yeah.
and cut things out of paper and do drawings and all that. So
Yeah.
so Matt was really good. I don't know if I was better than him or he was better than me. And then when I got into junior high, I became friends with a guy from another elementary school named Robert Stanley, and he was really good. And he knew about drawing implements that I had never heard of. So he had like crow quill pens and
Oh,
all kinds of things. And he knew like all the names of the comic artists and Mad Magazine artists. And I was into all that stuff, but I never took the time to learn or like figure out who the artists were. And he did. He like paid attention to credits, and if there weren't credits, he would find out. Who's this guy? He's really good. I got to find out more about him. So he turned me on to a lot of stuff that I wasn't aware of previously.
So when you graduated high school, what was the plan after that?
So again, my sister Sue, as I was approaching graduation, she said, you got to start thinking about college and you should go to art school. So she helped me, with kind of sourcing that out, like what's nearby, what's available. And I ended up going to the College for Creative Studies in Detroit, which is now, well, it's called the College for Creative Studies now, but originally when I went, it was the Center for Creative Studies. And I actually teach there now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Round circle, like just circle of life, right?
Yeah, it's kind of a
wow,
welcome
what an honor.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew
How long
that
have
I
you
know
been-
you told me that you taught, but I didn't realize it was the same place that you actually went to school for. That was
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
How long have you been
Like-
teaching there?
About 4 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, I know that you took time out of your time off today to be with us, which is another reason why I'm very happy to have you on the show, because you said that normally on Tuesdays you're teaching, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Wow, thank you.
we've been trying to schedule this, I think, since late last year, and we finally caught, like, what is this, like a spring break?
This is spring
technically?
break. Yeah. This week.
Yeah. Doesn't feel like spring yet, but it's spring break. Although we did spring forward recently, so I guess that kind of fits in with it.
And we had a nice spring day today and yesterday. So it's feeling a little bit like spring. I know it's going to get cold again, but kind of feels that way.
And what is? Oh, sorry, Thomas. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I was looking at some of your credits, like Rescuers Down Under. I was like, even though I didn't know you, like I kind of knew you because of your art. It's kind of just surreal to think about.
Did you kind of grow up with it? Like
I grew up with
those
Rescuers.
images?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, same.
Some of your artwork, yeah.
I hear that quite often at comic conventions, where people come up to me and they'll say, "Oh my God, I had your Little Mermaid poster on my bedroom wall." Or some of the kids, before I was doing Disney art, I was doing other kinds of movie posters, and I did some horror movies, some teen comedies, all kinds of genres. And one of the big ones that everyone remembers was a movie called House.
Yes, I was hoping you're going to bring that one up.
And so a lot of adults come up to me and tell me they were scared out of their minds by my painting of that I did for the House poster.
Yeah.
Some say they had it on their bedroom wall. Some say they rented the video because the artwork was on the video box as well, and they had to sneak it, from their parents. They had to like sneak it home from the video store.
I wonder what that looks like. I haven't seen that before. That poster.
I'm trying to pull up a picture right
It's,
now. But
it's kind of grisly.
Here it is. I found it.
But in a funny kind of way.
Okay.
Let me just share my screen with you guys really quick, and I'll show you what it looks like.
The movie itself was kind of a horror comedy.
Oh yeah.
You know, it has a real sense of humor.
Oh my gosh, I know that one.
You know that?
Wow. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
Incredible.
one of my favorite movies growing up in the 80s. I think I've seen it a million times.
Oh.
So that hand, that severed rotting zombie hand, isn't even in the movie, but it's, one of the art directors came up with the idea and handed it off to me to paint it, and I think it perfectly represents the movie, even though it's not in the movie. It's kind of funny, but very scary at the same time.
And there was a lot of humor, dark humor in that movie
Yeah,
too. I
right.
mean, even when it came to defeating the monsters, William Catt was brilliant. Like every once in a while he would give out this laugh like like just crazy laugh. And yeah, there was just lots of moments like that that added sort of like a twisted levity to it that I really just connected with. It was so good. And Andrew says this is one of my all-time favorite movie posters.
Oh, thank you, Andrew.
So let's go back to your class really quick. What is the name of the class that you teach, and what specifically do you teach at your
Well,
school?
I teach a couple of different classes, and I sort of alternate between semesters. So,
Okay.
and they're all in the animation department. So,
That's awesome.
the college has a very good and kind of a large entertainment arts program. And so students can learn game design, prop design, animation, all the things that go into creating film and games. And but mostly what I teach is character and environment design or backgrounds,
Okay.
and advanced story concepts, which is more writing, but writing for animation primarily. It's kind of a class that gets students, it's a prerequisite to their senior thesis project. So they have to go through this course to kind of learn how to develop a project, be it a game or a film, but, it's all about storytelling and, the things that go into that to make a really good end product.
Yeah, because sometimes it's just a portrait, but then other times there are pictures that do tell a story just without even any words.
Right.
But you're
Yeah.
used to the writing portion because you have done writing before in your professional career. So tell us
Yes.
more about that. What have you done in the past?
Well, I started as an artist, illustrator, like I said, doing movie posters. I always wanted to be a comic book artist, but I never once dreamed that I would be a writer. Like, it didn't even enter my mind as a possibility. It wasn't an ambition of mine. I always just thought, if I get to do comics, hopefully I'll be lucky enough to get good scripts. But if I'm doing illustration, hopefully I've got good art direction and good projects to work on. But I never thought about generating those things myself as a writer, until The Simpsons came along, and I was working on a magazine called Simpsons Illustrated, which was a fan magazine for The Simpsons. Came out in 1991, and I worked on the first issue. And I'd done some spot illustrations for it already, and then the editor, who was Steve Vance, called me up and he said, "Would you like to do a comic strip? Because we're going to have a comic section in the magazine, and right now it's just one page, but Matt Groening, creator of The Simpsons, would like to expand it, and but for this first issue, it's just going to be one little comic strip." And I said, "Oh my God, yes, please. I mean, this is like what I wanted to do."
It like
growing
landed
up.
in your lap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I did it. So I drew the first Simpsons comic strip. And then I called him up. I had such a great time doing it that I called Steve and I said, as we're working on the second issue, I would love to do another one. So if you have another script, please consider me. And he said, well, we, like I said, Matt really wants to expand the comics and have them in every issue, but we've got a problem because nobody's got time to write a script right now. So if you want to write something, then you can also draw it.
Wow.
And I said, oh, okay. I think I was pretty calm about it and accepted the assignment and just said, oh, okay, that sounds great. And I hung up the phone. And then I was just like, oh, wow, what did I just do?
What you just get yourself into, right?
Yeah. And I thought, I've never written anything. How am I going to do this? So I started thinking, well, first I have to come up with a story. And I thought, I don't know, it's got to be a Simpsons kind of story. It's got to be maybe something with Bart. And I started thinking about things that happened to me when I was a kid. And I thought of some funny stories. And I thought, oh, I could write about this thing that happened to me and just turn me into Bart and turn these adults that are in the story into Homer or Barney or whoever. And that's what I did. So I didn't know how to type. So I wrote it all out longhand, and my wife typed it for me, so I didn't look like an idiot too much. And I turned it in, and kind of hoped for the best. And Matt Groening looked at it. I mean, Matt owns the publishing rights to The Simpsons, so he was very involved in this and in the magazine, and especially the comics. And they told me that Matt loved it. He rewrote the last line to give it like a funnier punchline. But other than that, he thought it was great. So do one for issue 3.
Wow.
Wow.
And for issue 3, we want 2 pages. And then do another one for issue 4 and 5. And then the pages kept getting longer, the page count, till I was doing 5-page stories. And so we did that for 2 years.
Oh, wow.
The magazine. And the end of the first year, we had an annual, and the annual was a 3D issue. So it had a gimmick. It had 3D glasses and all the ads, everything in it was 3D, the ads, everything. And so they were trying to come up with another gimmick. They couldn't just come out with like a normal issue for the annual for the second year. So Matt and Steve were trying to figure out what can we do that will be kind of different and special. And by that time, we were having so much fun doing the comics. Like, that's what everyone looked forward to. Like, we didn't really care about a lot of the other stuff in the magazine as much as we did the comics. So somebody had the idea, let's just do an all comics issue. Mm-hmm. And if we're doing that, why don't we make it a comic book? And if we're going to make it a comic book, it's going to be comic book size. And instead of calling it Simpsons Illustrated, let's call it something else. So they called it Simpsons Comics and Stories after Walt Disney. That was like the first Disney Simpsons connection, I think.
Oh, wow.
So it was an homage to Walt Disney Comics and Stories, the Uncle Scrooge, Donald Duck comics that we all grew up with.
And when was this taking place? Can you give us a time frame?
Yes. So we started the magazine in 91. By the time we were doing the first comic book, it was the end of 92. And the comic came out in February of 93.
And when did they start doing the animated series?
1990.
It was 90, okay.
Well, 1989 was the Christmas special.
Okay.
And 2 years prior to that were the shorts on the Tracy Ullman show.
Right.
So,
I remember that. So
the primetime series officially started in 1990 after the Christmas special a couple of months prior to that. So The Simpsons as a TV show has been around about 2 years. And the comics sold like crazy. And that was, Matt had always wanted to start his own comic book company. That was like his childhood dream, was to have a company. And
well, look what he's got now.
Yeah. And prior to Bongo, which is what we ended up naming the company, the all the other big comic book companies courted Matt because they all went to Fox to see if they could do a Simpsons comic book, and Fox directed them to Matt because he held the rights for publishing. So they all went to Matt, and Matt turned them all down because he didn't want to just hand the Simpsons over to people he didn't know and have to trust them to do, a decent job of it. So he wanted it to be people in his circle, people he trusted, and people he trained, quite frankly. I mean, he trained me to be an artist for The Simpsons and to be a writer. So, that comic book was what gave him the confidence to say, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to start a comic book company.
Humble beginnings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Bill,
amazing.
did it get to a point where it became easy to write the stories after you kind of started your first one? Did it become more effortless?
Yes.
Cool.
I would normally think of ideas like on my commute. Sometimes just listening to the radio, or sometimes you see a billboard, or
Yeah.
lots of things spark ideas.
Almost like shower thoughts.
Yeah.
It's funny all the stuff that goes through your head when you're sitting in traffic, huh?
Yeah. And The Simpsons is a perfect. It's social satire, so really anything could spark a story for The Simpsons. It's just all about our culture. It's I always tell people that 100 years from now, 500 years from now, I think people will be studying The Simpsons to see what we were all about.
Yeah.
That'd be scary, but they've predicted a lot of stuff so far, so who knows?
Yeah.
Patricia, one of our listeners and number one fan, she's also a writer, and she wants to know, are there aspects that you factor into writing for animation that are different than other media?
Well, I've never really, or I haven't really written much for animation. Most of my writing's been comics, and there's a big difference between writing for animation and writing for comics. I will say that. They can do something in a half hour on the TV show that might take me 3 issues of a comic book to accomplish.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
There's kind of like a process of editing, and like if you have an idea, you have to kind of you have to use there's like an economical process. So they can do a sight gag on the show that might take up 3 seconds of film, and if I was to do that same sight gag in the comic, it probably would take up at least a whole page.
Right.
And I've only got maybe 21 pages to work with, and I've got to tell a story. So I don't necessarily have a page to spare that I can just do a gag that doesn't relate to the story at all.
That makes total sense.
Doesn't move the story along, at least. So things like that. There, lots of things where you have to think, well, if I was writing this for the screen, I could do this, but it's not going to work in a comic book, and vice versa. We did things in the comics that they would never do on the show because we knew our audience. We knew that our audience was comic book savvy, and we could make references. Like on the show, they'll do references to very famous comic book artists and writers, or famous characters, Spider-Man, Batman, X-Men. But we could do like a deep dive reference to a really obscure character, and people would get it. Stuff like that.
Yeah.
So we always tried to keep the comics as close to the show as possible, but there were slight differences where we could do things they couldn't, and vice versa.
Did you ever see The Simpsons being as big as it is today when you were doing all this back then in 90, what was it, you said 91, 92?
Yeah, well, I started in 90 doing artwork for merchandise. So when I started drawing the characters, it had only been a primetime show for about 3 weeks.
Oh, wow.
And I remember calling my mom because I was at the job where I was painting all the Disney posters, and they made me this great offer, and I called my mom and I told her about it, and I said, I think I'm going to do it. I think I'm going to take the job. And she said, Bill, I don't think this is a smart idea. This show's probably going to be off the air in a year or two, and
Oh my
then
God.
where will you be? You're gonna be looking for another job. You should stick with a sure thing. I mean, you're doing stuff for Disney. Stay at that job.
Wow.
And normally I listen to my mom, but
Not this
I
time,
didn't.
Mom.
Yeah, but
I'm glad you didn't.
nobody, even Matt Groening, the producers, the writers, nobody saw this coming. The original goal for Matt was he thought if he could beat the record set by the Flintstones, which was the longest running primetime animated show of 6, and it ran for 6 years in primetime. Then it went to Saturday morning, but 6 years, that was like the one to beat.
Wow, he
So
surpassed that.
yeah, so he
Oh,
thought,
wow.
if we go 3 years, we'll be lucky. If we could go 6 years, man, would that be great, and beat the Flintstones?
Good
And
Lord.
yeah,
Wow.
And
and
now
they beat every record.
every record still continues to beat them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Still, to this,
Yeah.
nobody can beat it anymore. So perfect time to segue into the main part of this show, which is Disney.
Yes.
So you said that you were working for Disney already at that time.
Yeah.
How did you get in the door at Disney, and what did you do for them?
Well, I wasn't. I always say I was doing work for Disney. I wasn't actually working for Disney, so I wasn't
Oh,
employed by
okay.
Disney. I When I came out to Hollywood, and the house poster and all that was done at my first job, which was an ad agency called BD Fox and Friends Advertising, and I did all kinds of general movie advertising. Like I said, different genres. I did, I think, one animated film poster for a real bad, low budget kind of fantasy film.
Mm-hmm.
Most everything I did was more photorealistic kind of stuff. So one day I was at work, and my boss's wife called me, and she had a little business that she ran in the same building, manufacturing greeting cards. So she called me up and she said, I need a favor. I've got an artist coming in, and he's going to show his portfolio. I set up this appointment and I forgot about it, and I can't get back to the office in time. So can you review his portfolio and give him some notes? And I said, yeah, okay, I guess. And I'm expecting a kid. I'm expecting maybe somebody my age, just starting out. And in walks one of my idols, a guy by the name of David Willardson, who many Disney fans will know because he's a very famous Disney artist. And Dave walks in. I knew what he looked like from airbrush magazines. I collected his art, in tear sheets out of magazines and greeting cards and all kinds of things. I had like a file of Dave Willardson art that I
Oh,
studied.
wow.
What Disney art did he do? Like, what's an example?
He's done a lot of limited edition Disney art,
Okay.
paintings and prints and plates, collector plates, and
Oh.
yeah. So anyway, Dave starts showing me his portfolio, and I'm just like, yeah, right. I'm supposed to give this guy a portfolio review. Okay. Let's see if I can pull this off. So we're just chatting. I'm looking at his book, and I'm just going, oh yeah, I know that one. I remember that. Yeah, this one's great. How'd you do that? This is really amazing. And Well, I'm
You're like
doing that while
fanboying
I'm,
when you're supposed to be evaluating
right.
something.
While I'm like fawning all over him. He's looking at my walls, and
uh,
I had this poster that I did for a movie called Choose Me, and it was like a very stylized airbrush painting of a woman talking on a pink telephone. So it's like a
Mm.
very close shot. You can see all the shine on her nails and the shine on the phone and everything. Very slick airbrush art. And Dave said, "Did you paint that?" And I said, "Oh yeah, it's one of the things I painted here, BD Fox." And he said, "Huh, I thought Mick McGinty did that." And Mick was like a young guy like my age, but like really hot. He was like one of the hot young airbrush artists out in Hollywood. And I said, "No, no, that was me." And he said, "Do they ever let you do freelance work here, or are you kind of tied down?" And I said, "No, when things aren't busy, I can do freelance work." And he said, "Why don't you come over to my studio, and I might have some freelance stuff for you." So I went over, and he gave me my first freelance job. I think I did 2 freelance jobs for him, and then he made me an offer to work for him in the studio. So I took the job, and I mean, number one, I think it paid a little better than what I was making, but I thought I'm going to get paid to get an education because it's going to be like an apprenticeship working for
yeah.
me. So I did a number of just kind of general advertising pieces. I mean, we did labels for Nestle's Quick and ads for Maxell audio tape and all kinds of things. And one day, a Disney art director called Dave, and Dave had done this ad for Disney World that had Goofy, I think, in like a tennis outfit or something, with a racket.
Sounds right.
And and they really liked that because it was all rendered. It wasn't flat art, flat color. It was like beautifully gradated, rendered, with rim lighting and
Uh-huh.
really beautiful. And they said, "We want that look on. We're re-releasing Cinderella into theaters, and we need a teaser poster, and then we need a main poster." So Dave accepted the job, and I worked in his studio with one other illustrator, guy named Calvin Patton. So it was Calvin, me, and Dave. Dave was working on his own gallery stuff at the time, and Calvin was really the better guy at doing photorealistic stuff. And Dave knew that I was into cartoons and animation and comics. So Dave said, how would you like to do this Cinderella poster?" And I was like, "Oh boy." So I did the teaser, which was just the mice carrying a satin pillow with the glass slipper on the pillow and all this kind of fairy dust coming off of it. And Disney really liked it. They were like, "This is great. Do the main poster now." So the main one had Cinderella and the prince and the castle in the background, all the mice, the fairy godmothers and all that.
Wow.
So, so based on those 2 posters, they were successful, at least with the Disney art directors. So they started throwing all their poster work to our studio. So I became the cartoon guy in the studio, and Calvin was the realism guy, and Dave could do both. So Dave helped both of us and pitched in when we needed him. But yeah, I ended up doing the first Oliver and Company poster, first Little Mermaid, first Rescuers Down Under, Roller Coaster Rabbit, The Prince and the Pauper. Yeah,
Oh, I
Is that the
remember that
one?
poster.
This is one of yours then, right? This
yeah,
is the one?
yeah. That's the
Nice.
main one, and
Beautiful.
the other one was the teaser with the satin pillow. But I got to do the classics. I got to do Peter Pan. I got to do Bambi.
Oh, love Peter Pan.
Jungle Book, Lady and the Tramp.
Um,
So yeah, I got to do um, just some of my very favorite films. Work on some of my favorite characters. When I did the Mickey Mouse Prince and the Pauper, that was like
Oh yeah.
I couldn't believe it. Like I'm getting to paint an official painting that's designed to lure people in to see this new Mickey Mouse film,
Oh, so that was
and
for a brand new film, right?
brand new one. Yeah,
And the other
wow.
ones were for like just re-releases or just like video releases.
no, they were the theatrical one sheets. So these were the
Oh,
posters that you saw at bus stops, that you saw in the lobbies of movie theaters.
right, right.
Bill,
So
I have a question and I'm
yeah,
so curious about it. So, just a little bit of a point before asking it. I watched this one artist, and you probably know his name. He came up with the Beast in Beauty and the Beast. He came up with the design, but he was holding an art exhibit for people, and he was drawing the Beast, and he said something that always stuck with me. I thought it was so brilliant. He said, "When I'm creating a character," he said, "I kind of humble myself and tell myself that this character already exists and I have to find them." And he says, "I just start searching like horns, no, maybe the," and he pretty much said, "I felt like I found the beast." So my question to you is, when you're given a project like make the Cinderella poster, make the Little Mermaid, what is your usual thought process of how to lay things out, what to add, why put it there?
well, a lot of the design of the posters came from the art department at Disney.
Okay.
So they had art directors who would, just do a pencil sketch that would give me like kind of a rough idea of what they wanted layout wise.
Okay.
So for a lot of them, it was up to me to just take what they had done, maybe rework it a little bit just to make things fit better, because they're sketching in things very rough and quick.
Mhm.
But then to just put it on model and make it look pretty, I mean, that was the main job. So my thought process was more about um, being respectful of the characters.
Mhm.
I knew I was doing kind of a modern take on these classic characters when I was doing Peter Pan or the Jungle Book. So I'm not painting them flat in flat colors, so they don't look like they look exactly in the film. They're more rounded. They're more like the 3D films that Disney does today.
Oh
So
yeah,
that
you're right.
was
There's like more of a depth to them. Yeah.
right. Yeah, they got lighting and shadow and halftones and everything. Um, so my main thought process was, um, as a fan, I want these. I want other fans to accept the art. I want them to look at the art and go, "That's the character that I love. That's the character that I grew up with, that I remember, even though it's rendered in a little bit different way." And
Yeah.
I mean, with the Disney gallery programs and so many different artists doing their interpretations of characters and doing them fully painted and fully rendered, that's not a big deal today. But back in the 80s, that was kind of like I remember hearing that some of the animators didn't like the posters because of that fact that they didn't look like the film. They looked rounded, and
Oh,
you know they look
interesting.
they look too real for them. They thought they should look flat on the poster to represent the way they look in the film.
Hmm.
So I wanted to be respectful, but as a fan, I just wanted people to you know to love the images
Well, mission
and
accomplished. When I
Yeah.
would like hold the VHS, as I'm sure everyone can agree, I would just stare at them for, as a kid, for minutes. I would just observe and be fascinated about every like part of it. To me, like told a story, and I was just mesmerized by. I thought it was beautiful. It is
Yes.
beautiful.
there were some where there wasn't so much how should I say this? Well, like say like with the Little Mermaid. that was a big deal for Disney feature film. Like, so they had to get the advertising just right for that. So the art directors spent a lot of time. Like, I remember I did like 3 paintings for
Oh,
the Little Mermaid poster before we finally got to the final one. So they're putting a lot of money and a lot of energy and time into the design and the look of the poster because they want to get it right. For some of the re-releases, I think they did just leave it to
well,
me and Dave and Calvin at the studio to just come up with something. Yes, this was at the Reagan Library, which used to be about a quarter mile from my house, and they had an exhibit there called Treasures from the Disney Archives. And this is the actual poster, the actual painting for the
oh
poster.
wow.
Wow.
And I had not seen this art at the time this photo was taken. I hadn't seen this art for at least 15 years, maybe 20. And I remember kind of tearing up. It was almost like seeing an old friend, you know?
Oh,
Can
Yeah,
Nice.
imagine.
it was emotional. I remember just going, wow.
Mm.
And
so
You know what is portrayed so amazingly, Bill, is like you look at each character and in one frame you understand the general emotion of that character. Like you look at Ursula, you get her what she's gonna be about. You see Eric looking at Ariel so endearingly, and you see he's gonna be a gentle, soft, masculine character, and Scuttle being silly. Like it's so perfectly captured.
well, thank you.
Well,
Like I said, I think we went through, I know I did 2 paintings prior to this one. So there was a lot of effort and care in getting it just right.
mhm.
So, Bill, let's. We had talked about this at the show in Stockton, and we also talked about it a little bit pre-show, because that particular one that we just showed on the screen, that may not be the version that everybody had the big
Yeah.
controversy around. But I wanted you to take a moment to, like you said, help clear the air about what that was all about, and maybe give the audience a bit of an explanation as far as what your side of the story is for the poster that caused so much turmoil.
Yeah.
Well, it actually wasn't a poster, it was the video cassette box.
Right. My apologies.
That's okay. A lot of people kind of confuse the two because they're very similar images. Um, in the video box art, Ariel's striking a different pose. Eric looks pretty much the same. I think Triton and Ursula look the same, and a couple of things are moved around, and the aspect ratio is different, but they are very similar images. And the reason behind that is the reason why the scandal came about, because I our studio had not previously done any work for Disney home video. So all the work that we were doing for Disney at the Willardson studio was Disney feature film. And one day Dave got a call from an art director at Disney Home Video, and he said, "I'd like to come over to your studio and talk to you about possibly doing some artwork for the Little Mermaid video box art." And he brought this piece of art with him that was basically the Under the Sea number. So it had all the fish musicians and you know it, all the characters from that scene, and that was originally going to be the video box cover.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, nothing wrong with this art. It's done by our regular artist. He does all of our video boxes. But he said, my boss really loves the poster. And he said, find the guy who did the poster and have him do something similar. So it had taken this art director, I guess, a good amount of time, maybe a couple of weeks, to find where that art came from, because it's a different department. It's in a different building from Disney feature film. And it just took some time to find out who the artist was. And So, he basically told Dave, now here's my problem. If you guys can do the art, I'll send over a rough sketch, just, showing a few changes from the poster, just a layout. But I need it on Monday.
Oh,
And I think this was a Thursday night,
Oh
if I'm not
wow.
mistaken, or Thursday afternoon.
Short notice.
So Dave took me aside and he said, can you work this weekend and get this done? So he's going to send over a layout and then you can just, start painting. And I said, yeah, I'll get it done. So I did, and I was rushed, and I did at least 2 all-nighters. I think I did an all-nighter Saturday night, and then slept a couple of hours, and then did another one Sunday night, and pushed through until probably about 3 in the morning. I was working on the castle. I spent a lot of time on the characters and got them looking reasonably okay. And I never even noticed that one of the towers in the castle was, I know this is a family show, so let's just say very phallic looking.
that's a perfect word.
Okay. And then, Dave came in 9 a.m. or so, 8 a.m., and I had the job done. We took it over to Disney Home Video. They okayed it. It went to the printer because they had a strict printing deadline. And then everything was fine. We never heard anything else about it until the day it was released. And that's when all the doo-doo hit the fan.
Did it ever?
I was at the time I was a youth leader at my church,
Oh.
and I wasn't like the youth pastor, but I was like a volunteer.
Yeah.
So I knew a lot of the kids, and they knew that I did all this stuff for Disney, and I was always telling them what I was working on because they would always ask me. And so I got a call from one of the kids in my youth group, and he was very shy, and like he had a hard time getting the words out. But he called me and he said, "So Bill, you told us that you worked on the Little Mermaid video box art, right?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Huh. So really, you did that art?" And I said, "Yeah." Luke, why? What's going on? What's wrong? He goes, "So you're the one that put the thing in there?" And I go, "What thing?" And he's like, the thing in the castle. And I go, "Luke, I have no idea what you're talking about. What?" And I go, "Hang on. We just got a copy of the tape, so let me go grab it." So I grab the tape and I bring it to the phone. And I go, "Okay, I'm looking at it now, Luke. What am I supposed to be looking at?" And he goes, "Okay, you see the castle behind Ariel? Yeah. Okay, you see that tower kind of in the middle? Yeah. Well, what does it look like?"
Oh no.
And I'm staring at this thing, and suddenly I just went,
Oh no!
Oh, you must have.
Oh
that was the first time.
no!
That was the first time I realized it looks like what it looks like.
Oh,
Wait,
you
I'm
were
sorry.
so
How old
tired
is
painting, though. I mean, you were just like on
right?
zombie mode.
I was, like I said, it was probably 3 in the morning when I was painting that castle, and I was just like trying to get it done.
Oh, brutal. And how old
Yeah.
was Luke? How old was this
Luke was
kid that you-
probably 13,
Oh,
14.
jeez.
Yeah.
You got a teenager showing. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's
And I said,
crazy.
Luke, I said, "Did you just notice this on your own or what?" And he goes, "No, they're talking about it on the radio."
Oh my gosh.
And that was when I went, "Uh-oh, what are they saying?" It's like, well, they're saying that this degenerate Disney artist was getting fired, and this was his like act of defiance, his last act of defiance and revenge against Disney for firing him. And I'm like, well, I don't really work for Disney, so that's not right. I'm not getting fired. So those two things are wrong just on their face.
Touche, paparazzi.
Yeah. So anyway, I think that night or maybe the next night, might have been a couple nights later. We always worked late in the studio, so we always had like the evening news on, and we saw this teaser for an ABC news program or news report about the Little Mermaid scandal, and they were interviewing the lady at Ground Zero, the lady in Arizona who started the whole thing
Oh my
by
gosh.
complaining to her video store.
Gosh.
And so I actually saw this is such a vivid memory. Saw this pan shot. So they're doing the report, they're interviewing the lady, and there's this pan shot at the video store going down the shelf. Several Little Mermaid videotapes on the shelf, but they're all in brown paper lunch sacks with Little Mermaid written in magic marker on the bags.
Oh my gosh.
I half expected you to say that they were in the room in the back with all the other videos.
No,
Gosh, Bill, my heart just like you were just doing honest work. You put your soul into it, and it didn't even cross your mind that this would be a thing. Like,
no.
Oh.
And this became an urban legend that just kind of changed. It was like a game of telephone. Yeah. So every time somebody told a friend of theirs, "Oh, did you hear about that artist at Disney that got fired and he put the dirty imagery in the Little Mermaid video box art?"
And it was harder to fact check back in the day because you couldn't go to the internet. Like telephone was easier to do back in the day.
Yeah, and C. Andrew is kind of echoing something like that. It says everybody signed off on it, so it's not your fault. I agree.
True.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. Nobody, like I said, it went right to the printer. Nobody ever even noticed it.
Yeah.
It's just nice.
Yeah.
It's just nice getting that full circle moment in real life. Like, because I remember growing up in the playground and like hearing those rumors, or like Disney's always trying to sneak something into something, and like there's always like those rumors. So it's nice having that full circle moment with you.
Well, I'm glad you're talking here, Bill, and like I'm sure you do other podcasts, but you're just like, my goodness, you're known for so much more than that. That was just one part of your career. Look what other amazing, extraordinary things you've done and are doing with your art school, and I mean that's who you actually are, not that one art.
I still feel like that cover though did set a really good tone for the Renaissance, the Disney Renaissance movies. Like,
yes.
Like, especially as a 90s kid, like that's one of the top 3 covers that I personally love.
Same.
So
100%.
And did you do
Little
Beauty
Mermaid
and the
in
Beast?
general? Oh, go ahead.
No. Actually, Beauty and that photo you showed from the library, the Reagan Library, of me with the mermaid painting.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah.
The other painting, the other original painting they had there was the Beauty and the Beast painting.
Oh.
Okay.
And that was painted by Calvin Patton and Phil Hom and John Hom. And Phil and John kind of replaced me at Willardson Studio when I got sort of lured away to start working on The Simpsons. So Beauty and the Beast came out after I left to go start working on The Simpsons.
I think I found this one here. Let me just see if it's the same one that you're talking about.
By the way, as Jason is looking that up, I think to write comic books is so talented because you have to tell a story in one frame, but you have to like put a lot into it instead of like the multiple frames per second in a movie. You have to tell a lot in one frame and create a story within a short frame of time. And establish shots and
there is kind of a link to storyboards. Storyboards is sort of the cousin of comic book art, but you're right. Comic books, you can't do you can if you want to do like a sequence of shots the way you would do in a storyboard for a film, you could do that, but it's going to be a 500-page graphic novel. So like I said, you're using like an economy of pictures, an economy of words to do the same thing that the film's doing. And I always say comics are film on paper, but there is an art to it. You can't just do the film on paper. Otherwise, people will get bored, and
Mhm.
you'll eat up a lot of paper.
Andrew is saying that
Yeah.
now I absolutely have to have you sign my Little Mermaid VHS case.
Well, yeah, bring it to the next show, Andrew, and we'll have to get together and have lunch, and be happy to do that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
We're getting close to the hour. I just want to address one quick question from him really quick, and then we'll kind of get into our wrap up here because we're at the end of our hour already. Apart from what you do commercially, what sort of art do you enjoy creating just for yourself? That's a great question.
I love doing. I did a show a number of years ago called Detroit Pop, which was a pop art show, and it was all paintings of mostly rock stars, but also pop stars from Michigan, from the Detroit area. I did this when I was still living in California, but I did it for a gallery in Detroit, and I love doing that. I love to paint. Um, I like it's kind of related to what I did in the early days doing movie posters, because sometimes I would have to do portraiture of whoever the star was of the film. But I always enjoyed that, and I kind of like doing it. I don't consider it fine art because um, it's fun and frivolous, but it's pop art, and I like that.
Awesome. Okay, so I have a few other questions that I was going to ask. We're running short on time, so maybe we'll do kind of like a lightning round, and then we'll finalize it. Is that okay? Are you okay with just
Sure.
staying a few more minutes? Okay. So I've had other people on our show before that, even though they've done stuff for Disney or worked with Disney, are not necessarily Disney fans. Are you a Disney fan?
Oh my God, yeah,
100%, huh?
100%.
Love it.
We used to have this thing called Happy Soup. You remember Happy Soup? You're all too young. It was a soup company that licensed the Disney characters, and so they were on the label of every can. Different characters on different flavors.
Uh-huh.
But if you cut the label off, there was stuff on the inside of the label, like puzzles and games, and I used to have the 8mm films, that I would show on my dad's movie projector before video. Yeah.
I had the little
Always.
Fisher Price reel thing that you could actually, crank like this, and you see like a little Disney film inside of it.
Yeah.
I'm not as young as you might think, actually.
First movie I ever saw in a theater, not on television, was Mary Poppins.
Oh yes.
And it's the first movie I ever saw twice.
Oh.
Because my mom took me to see it, and I loved it so much that she decided that my sisters should see it. So I got to go back again the next week and see it with my sisters.
I love that.
Next question: do you still visit Disney parks?
I do.
How often?
Last time was when I still lived in California, so I haven't been to Disney World since I've. That's not exactly true. I've been to like the restaurant shopping area of Disney World,
like downtown Disney.
Downtown Disney.
Yeah.
But I haven't been inside the park for a long time, Disney World. But Disneyland, we used to go as often as we could, usually when people came into town because we wanted to impress them. And so we would take them down to Disney. And I got to go to Club 33 once.
Nice.
And have lunch there.
Wow. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Not everybody can say that. That's an honor amongst Disney fans. So, and then any upcoming projects or appearances, since we talked about appearances, that you would like to promote or even talk about your social media?
The next show I'm doing is in a couple of weeks in Springfield, Illinois. Springfield, yes.
Simpsons.
Yeah. And it's the Midwest Toy and Comic Festival.
Alrighty.
Oh.
Yeah, so I'm doing that in a few weeks. I'm doing a couple more close to home. Astronomicon is one I'm doing coming up in Michigan. Capital City. The big one I'm doing is Comic-Con San Diego. So
you're going to be there that's this year, right? You're talking
this year.
When's that, in July?
In July. I'm pretty much there every year now. So I have a regular table, and it's in table I-05 in Hall A. So you can
regular.
find me there. I always bring comics and prints and Disney stuff, Simpsons stuff, Futurama. We didn't even get into Futurama, so
No, I know. There's only so much you can squeeze into an hour-long show.
Next
yeah.
podcast. You're always welcome
Yes,
back.
next time. We've got
I'd love
lots
to
more
come
stuff
back.
we can talk about. Brandon says, I can't wait for San Diego. I haven't been to the San Diego Comic Con in decades, literally decades. But it is an amazing show, and
Yeah.
I hope you get a lot of fans come visit you on your upcoming shows. And safe travels everywhere you go, please. And
Thank you.
Thank you again so much for being on our show. It was a very, very distinct pleasure to have you on today.
This was so much fun, and you're right, that hour goes by super fast. So
Told you. I told you it was going to happen very quick. Y'all don't know what happens behind the scenes before we go live, but I mentioned, I'm like, you'll see. It'll happen like in the blink of an eye. It goes by. So yeah, thanks again today. Thank you for my co-hosts Leia and Thomas again for being on here.
Thank you.
And thanks all of our people who are in the audience today for asking great questions, making fantastic comments. I always appreciate you guys. Please, if you haven't done it already, make sure to like, subscribe, follow on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube, on what else do I got? TikTok. Yes, and then of course all the audio podcast areas, which are Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and Podcast Network. For those who want a sneak peek into next week's episode, we are going to be talking about Indiana Jones, specifically the 30th anniversary of the ride at Disneyland and the movies, of course, that influenced that ride. So that's going to be a fun one. I know that we're all looking forward to. I think Mimi might actually be on that one. I told her about it and she got all excited. So great show, everybody. Thanks again to everyone who was listening, and thanks to all you guys on screen. Bill, got to have you back someday.
Yes.
I'd love to come back. Thanks, everyone. I appreciate everyone tuning in. And thank you, Leia, Thomas, Jason. This was great.
Thank you. See y'all next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.